Hi, and welcome to my very first FlossTube video. My name is Farish, and I've been designing and teaching needlework since 1981, and I kind of thought it was about time that I got on the FlossTube bandwagon, so here we are. I thought I would start with my current work in progress, which is actually something I've been stitching for over 4 years, that I actually designed in 1989, I think. America, Land That We Love, where there is a image for each one of the states that kind of showcases something that they're famous for or something that's kind of unique to that state as much as possible. It was really a fun project to design, and thinking about my stitching progress on America, Land That We Love, I thought this would be a good time to share a tip about how to best use highlighters to assist you in your stitching. I realize that a lot of people who are really into the technical stuff have actually progressed to where they're using software and using their iPad or even their phone to keep track of where they're stitching. But using highlighters is pretty effective too. The one thing that I would say though is to look for the highlighters that are retractable, because I see too many times that people mention in class or in stitching forums on Facebook, whatever, about stitching disasters where they have dropped their highlighter on their work. And sometimes they're successful in getting that ink out, and sometimes they're not. So the retractable ones are more expensive, but when you think about the risk that you take with your needlework by not putting the cap on securely or working with it and dropping it before you've retracted it or put the cap on, then I think the little extra expense is probably worth it. So this is what most people do. They will work with their chart and use one highlighter color to color in the symbols that they are next planning to stitch. And then they use another color after they have stitched it. And then that way they know where they are in the chart. And particularly if it's a chart there are symbols that are similar to each other, or maybe you're thinking about how you can progress from one area of the chart to another, then going along and highlighting before you stitch is a really effective tool. And then by coloring it in after you stitch, then you're ready for the next symbol that you're going to do, where you can go back to your first color and color in again pre-stitching and then color it in post-stitching. So that's my tip for the day, and I hope it's something that will help you with whatever you're stitching. Another one of my work in progress projects is for a class I'll be teaching online in September. And once I teach it to the group that has had planned to come to the Work of the Hands retreat in Winston-Salem, once we're finished with our online instruction, then I will be offering it to non-participants as well. And I am really enjoying the series. I called it the English Summer Garden series, and it's a set of 4, this being the 4th one in the group. And the first one I introduced just about a year ago, I guess a little bit more than a year ago, and that was Lady Charlotte, followed by Lady Elizabeth, who is named after one of my daughters, and Lady Catherine, who is my other daughter, and then Lady Virginia is the one that's coming up, and that's named after my granddaughter. So this is a fun project. I have the cross-stitch part finished, and now I'm going to be filling in the empty areas with white work techniques, and so that's really a fun project that's coming up. When I started thinking about what kind of format I wanted to use with my FlossTube videos, I decided that as much as possible I would use it as an opportunity to teach technique or stitches. And so I want to start with one of my favorite new discoveries. This is an old stitch. It's called the Victorian Cross. And when you look at it on the surface of the work, it appears just like any traditional cross stitch, but it's the way that it's done that makes it a little bit different. For me, the Victorian Cross is perfect when you're doing a border, particularly a sampler border that just might be a row of stitches or a divider between sections of a design. I don't like it as much for filling in large areas, but it can be done with that as well. So let me show you how this stitch is done and what makes it a little bit different than the way you would do a traditional cross. You're going to quickly see how the Victorian Cross is similar to and different from the traditional way to do a row of cross stitches. First thing you're going to notice is that we're working from right to left, and that we'll be completing the entire cross stitch as we go along. The first leg goes from bottom left to upper right. The second leg goes from upper left to bottom right. This is a very easy stitch to do in a sewing method. So let me show you how I actually stitch this. I don't poke and pull like I did that first stitch. Instead, when I'm making my first leg, I scoop up 2 linen threads at the top, complete that stitch, and scoop up actually 4 linen threads, the 2 that are back here and going ahead by 2. And then I just work all the way across the row in this method, scooping up 2 linen threads at the top, completing that stitch, and scooping up the next 2 linen threads at the bottom. So you can see where this is a great stitch when you just have a single row of cross stitches for a border or a dividing boundary between sections of a sampler or whatever. It's also a great way to stitch when you are working with a variegated or any kind of hand-painted thread. I have used it for doing large areas of stitching, but frankly, it's not my favorite use of the stitch. I like to use this when I've got a row of stitches to do. Let me show you what the back looks like. So on the back, you end up with 2 lines of stitches. That one will look like a row of perfect back stitches, and the other will look more like a stem stitch. To end my thread, I use what I call a serpentine crawl. I go under a stitch in this direction, and then I go back in the opposite direction. I work my way back and forth like this to keep the back flat and to secure the thread, and then I clip that off. So in my 2 work in progress projects that I've shown you today, I use that Victorian Cross in the horizontal lines in the design here, and each time I stitched a new square for one of the states that I'm working on, I used it again for the horizontal lines. The vertical lines I stitched in the traditional way. So I hope that this is a stitch that you will find a use for, and I hope that you'll come back and watch FlossTube number 2. Hope I haven't messed up too badly today. And meanwhile, let's keep in touch via social media, Facebook, my blog, even Instagram. So I'm trying to stay up with what's current in the world of communication. Meanwhile, stitch happy and be safe.